Hey guys, what's going on? Playing back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Headspace's Guide to Sleep. Alright guys, I'm going to be completely honest and say that this is the most excited that I've been to review a Netflix original ever since I started reviewing them in the beginning of this year. If you're wondering why I'm so excited, it's because it's related to the first show that I ever reviewed for this channel regarding Netflix originals. Back in early January, I reviewed a show called Headspace's Guide to Meditation, which was very well received, very appreciated. I had lots of positive comments on that videos, and I'm hoping that the same will be the case for this particular review as well. Headspace's Guide to Sleep is the second of 3 original shows that it's collaborating with Netflix on and releasing content for, and it's both similar and different to its predecessor. Like with Guide to Meditation, Guide to Sleep is set up in pretty much the exact same format as the last show was. The first half of each episode, of which there are 7 of them, is dedicated to talking about a specific topic that relates to the central concept of sleep. One episode might talk about sleeping pills, another episode might talk about insomnia, and another episode might talk about dreams. There's just all kinds of things that are talked about in this show, and it's impressive how many details they managed to cram in just a few short episodes. Once the first half of each episode is explored and done with, the last half of each episode is dedicated to a meditational exercise that basically brings everything together that the viewer just learned and helps put what they learn into practice. The technique that's used at the end of each episode is commonly referred to as the wind down technique, and I noticed that this wind down technique was both similar and different to the one that was used in Guide to Meditation. In Guide to Meditation, the technique that was used in the show stayed the same for pretty much throughout each episode of the show. It consisted of breathing in your nose for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 4 seconds after that, and then following that, you exhale through your mouth for 4 seconds, and then rinse and repeat until you're calm and collected. Guide to Sleep's technique starts off the same way, breathing in through your nose, holding your breath, and then exhaling, but I noticed that the exhale was 2 seconds longer compared to the usual technique that was talked about in Guide to Meditation, and then after a few minutes of that, that's when things really start to kick off. I also forgot to mention this at the beginning, but unlike Guide to Meditation, which was narrated by Headspace's founder, Andy, this time Guide to Sleep is narrated by a woman named Eve. And I have to say, Eve did a wonderful job narrating for this show. She just has the perfect tone of voice throughout the entire program that just leaves you soothed and relaxed the entire time you're watching it. And on top of that, she just has a very kind and charming personality, similar to how Andy did in Guide to Meditation. So whenever you're learning new things in this show, there's no need to be intimidated because she's very reassuring and very relaxed about the whole presentation, and she completely understands that everyone's sleeping needs are different. Anyway, getting back to the techniques used in the show, after a few minutes of deep breathing, which continues throughout the exercise, Eve encourages the viewer to do a variety of different things, such as noting images in one's head, counting backwards from 1,000, and just a bunch of other little activities that slowly lull the viewer into sleep. I would be lying if I said that I didn't fall asleep while watching this show, which was exactly the case. About halfway through, I was so relaxed with all the exercises that I was doing that I fell asleep and I actually missed an episode and I had to go back and watch it from the beginning. And it certainly doesn't help that Netflix continued to play the show while I was asleep and missing out on valuable exercise, which on one hand is kind of annoying, but on the other hand it's a true testament to the power of the techniques that are displayed on this show. In fact, Eve even makes a little joke at the beginning of the show by saying that this is one show she hopes that you're not awake for by the end of the credits. As with Guide to Meditation before it, Guide to Sleep is one of those shows that I feel is better enjoyed one episode at a time, or one episode a day if you will, as opposed to binge watching it. If you do choose to sit through multiple episodes of the show, you might find yourself in the same situation as I did and just end up accidentally sleeping through 1 or 2 episodes, which might sound like a good goal to strive for at first glance, but then you end up missing out on all the interesting information that's talked about in the show with regards to sleep. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of each and every single episode. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of my opinion on it, but I just felt there were all kinds of interesting information with regards to how our phones trick our eyes to staying asleep and just how important rapid eye movement is in order to have a good night's rest. Being that this is a Headspace program, they do champion the use of mindfulness and meditation as one of the main ways to combat all the problems that are talked about in the show, but they also do encourage other healthy habits such as exercise and talking to your doctor on a regular basis. So there isn't really anything in the way of spiritual mumbo jumbo if that's what you're thinking. There's actually a lot of great science behind what's talked about in Guide to Sleep. And the show is quick to bring up points from scientists and researchers as well as studies from universities to back up what it's talking about. So there's a lot of thought that's put into what's being talked about as opposed to everything just being hypothetical. I actually made it a point to practice the techniques I learned on the show last night when I went to sleep, and I was alarmed at how much better my sleep was because of it. I wouldn't say that I had a really deep sleep or anything like that. I've always considered myself a light sleeper to begin with, but it was definitely the best sleep I had in a long time. One last point I have about this show before I end my review: I love the animation in it. It is some of the most beautiful animation that I have seen in quite some time. There's just all kinds of animation styles being used, multiple colors being mishmashed together, and it just illustrates every concept that's being talked about perfectly. Something I liked about the use of color and animation in this show that Guide to Meditation didn't have is that it was easier to tell when an exercise was over in case your eyes were closed and you were in the middle of doing it. Each exercise uses dark muted colors, so it's not as hard on your eyes whenever you're in the middle of the exercise, and then whenever it finishes, it starts to fade toward brighter colors, so that signals to your brain even when your eyelids are closed that the exercise is over and it's time to move on to the next episode. That is if you want to, by the way, because like I said, if you end up binge watching this show, you might end up sleeping all the way through it. Overall, Guide to Sleep is a great show that I highly recommend for anyone that's experiencing sleep problems in their daily life. I continue to be surprised by just how impactful meditation has been on my life ever since I started practicing it. It just really astounds me how much 10 minutes of absolute silence can do for your mind, and it just goes to show how much noise we surround ourselves with all the time. I wholeheartedly recommend that you check out this show because it will definitely put you to sleep. And of course, I mean that in a good way. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Headspace's Guide to Sleep. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the horror film Things Heard and Seen. Bye-bye.